Matthew Chaim, welcome to Mint. Finally, we have you on. You are the last guest of season 4. Welcome, my friend.
Ooh, the finale. I love
The
it.
finale. Yes. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
It's good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. How's your state of mind? How are we feeling?
I feel busy. I feel overwhelmed. I feel excited. Um Today's been a good day. I kind of didn't work as hard as I do every day. I'm getting married in the summer, so I did some wedding prep stuff this morning. So it
Wow,
was a bit of
nice.
a veer out of Discord Twitter land for a few hours there in the morning. But yeah, most days are full throttle lately.
But
So
it's a big week. It's a big week. We announced chaos. We as in us, but you announced chaos, and the collective that kind of is behind that announced some new updates with Songcamp. But we'll go into all that stuff. Okay. So I always like to start these conversations kind of understanding who the guest is. Okay. So for starters, who are you, Matthew? What does the world need to know about you? But more specifically, how'd you get your start into crypto?
yeah, so I'm a musician first and foremost, from Montreal, Canada, and yeah, very was focused on my music career, just like putting music out under my own name, Matthew Chaim, for about 5-6 years, and ended up moving to LA and doing kind of the songwriting thing there. Put out an album at the end of 2019. Yeah, just focus on my music. Was very creatively satisfied out there. But I also went to business school back in the day. I thought I was going to be like in the entrepreneurial world, but then music kind of swallowed me whole. But there was this kind of other part of my, I guess, mind that felt a little atrophied out there. Wasn't super challenged, if you will. Kind of was just full deep in sort of like the art, which is also incredible. Like no shortages there. But when I got back to Montreal, I came back when the pandemic hit, thinking I was staying for like 3 months, but then like the world changed and so did my life, and I've been in Montreal ever since. But when I got back here, I was quarantining in like this hotel, and there's nothing else to do but go for walks. And I was a block away from an old friend of mine who I knew had been working in this thing called Ethereum since like 2016, but I didn't really understand what that meant. But we started just taking walks. We would walk our dogs together because there was nothing else you could do at that time.
Which, by the way, is my favorite form of exchanging ideas and having deep conversations is on a walk. But
Would agree.
Yes, I digress. Continue.
Would totally agree with that. And these were very fruitful kind of exchanges of ideas. He started educating me on what he was doing, and at the time, he was working at Loopring, which is like a layer 2 exchange and protocol. And so it was a very interesting sort of vantage point, like an interesting angle to sort of tear the fabric into this new world via like layer 2 technology, Merkle proofs, all this ZK rollups, like very kind of down in the piping stuff, which was super interesting. And I could feel the sort of passion and excitement he had for this new world. But I was sort of interested as a musician, as an artist, like how does this stuff kind of come to the surface? How does it meet culture and the things that I care about? And then one day he told me about this like art online that people are buying and selling. And my mind went on tilt. I was like, what are you talking about? And of course he was talking about NFTs. And that's when I fully kind of was just immersed in curiosity as to like what this space is. And that's what really like pushed me down the rabbit hole.
What year was that again?
So this was in 2020. This was summer 2020 when we first started talking about this stuff, and I first started getting interested. And then like it was kind of like waves of like deep interest versus still, I was like kind of really focused on my music thing and trying to, my shows were just starting to really happen when the pandemic hit. So that kind of got crushed. And I was like focusing on a new record and all this stuff, but I kept being pulled in. And I was looking for like, I was like hearing about DAOs, NFTs. I was like, where are the music DAOs? I found, DAO records and stuff like this. I was just like getting a taste. And then it was really in like October, November of 2020 that like my full plunge sort of thing.
So you and I have a very similar intro to crypto, at least on the intro side. So I'm a drummer. I typically have a drum set behind me, but I'm in Miami right now with some family. But I got my start into crypto one, kind of seeing Bitcoin's price at 20K and that catching my attention back in 2017. But what kept me in the door was seeing what companies like Media Chain were doing, which is Jesse Walden's from Variant Fund, who his project got acquired by Spotify around 2017. I was like, wow, he's actually helping musicians. I'm a musician using this technology to better their life, right? That was interesting to me. I'm not really interested by money. I'm not really like a financial person. I get numbers, but that's kind of like what kept me in the door, kind of similar to you. So once you got ETH pilled by your friend, told you about the projects he was working on, we're in 2020. what was the next step? Like, how did you get involved from there?
Yeah. So I guess like, yeah, just through that, like really just following my curiosity. And it was, at the time, yeah, kind of both like hearing a little bit about DAOs, but it wasn't like kind of where it is today, of course. And it was, and also on the NFT side, the visual side was really blowing up. This was in the time when like Beeple was starting to have like this $2 million moment. Then the, $69 million moment
Right.
came early the next year. But so I was seeing all this visual art NFT, but there was like not this much things happening in music NFT space. And I remember he had sent me a podcast, much like this one, an episode of I think it's called Into the Ether with RAC. And this is when he spoke about his launch with Zora at the time, which was still kind of the old marketplace that it was before the protocol of today. And he did his $tape project. And that was my first, like musicians are really experimenting and playing in the space. So I started following RAC and people who were like really experimenting at the edges. But I was like, there's not so much music stuff happening. This was also right around the time that Zora was like starting to tease this big kind of change. And it felt like this like cultural gravitational pull of like, it felt punk. It felt like new. It was exciting. And then that sort of, to me, like Zora and like Zora on Twitter was that sort of nucleus. And then around it came Mirror and Catalog and Forefront and Seed Club. And these things started popping up into my world. And I was like, ooh, this is a really interesting corner of the internet. I want to play here. And especially Catalog caught my eye. So I was spending a lot of time in the Catalog Discord being like, what are you guys? When are you launching? Because I wanted music NFT stuff to happen.
So why does music need Web3? Let's start with that. Why were you so excited around that? Like, what was the aha moment for you?
Yeah. The way I boil it down, and this is maybe a bit more of like a personal reason over global, as a musician who also just loves to play across the gamut. Like I like to wear all the hats. I like to like hold all the paintbrushes. For the most part, like I've always been like kind of self-managed, mostly independent. Signed one album deal when I was out in LA to basically pay for my life to live out there. But for the most part, like, and signed it mainly because it was with like kind of friends that I'd met there and could just like be in control of everything. And it was a short sort of situation. I love to just be in the kind of driver's seat across the gamut and really play in sort of the release mode of this thing. But you're sort of playing in this world. You're playing in this box of like, this is how you release things. You release things to these platforms and this is what you get for it and da 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 da. And then here I saw like, suddenly the sort of like canvas is extending past the making of my music and the making of the artwork and the teasers and the whatever and the Instagram stories, blah, blah, blah. It's extending all the way to how I distribute this music, through what means, through what mechanisms, and how I monetize it. And I could actually play like within the value realization of it. I could play within the story around its actual file scarcity or history. There was just like the canvas was extending all the way down into the piping of the thing. And that really excited me. I was like, ooh, I want to like grab some paintbrushes and play there too. And I couldn't do that in kind of the Web 2 or the current system, because it's sort of like, this is the way it is, and there was less mobility there. And so it's been a lot of fun kind of being able to play in that part of it.
So as a creative, what has your mind been open to and unlocked because of these NFT primitives, because of these social token primitives, because of token incentives, mechanism designs?
Yeah.
Like, how has your creativity shifted from a music creation process, from a people organization process, from a curation process? Because I feel like those keywords very much like resonate with you, just seeing your work, seeing what you do online. So how has crypto kind of influenced and inspired more creativity that you otherwise wouldn't have had before?
Yeah, I think like my mind goes in two different directions. One is like my relationship with my art. And the second is more, I would maybe boil it down to my relationship with other artists, primarily.
Okay.
And the first one being sort of like, I'll give you an example. When during the pandemic, even kind of in 2020, early 2020, really when it was starting, before I even fell down this rabbit hole, I was making a lot of music. And for the first time, really a lot more music on my own completely. I always worked with producers. That was why LA really resonated with me, because there's so many creative producers to work with there. But I was never really like creating the music that I was writing vocals and melodies and lyrics to. But then suddenly I was like forced indoors. So I was picking up the guitar a lot more. I was creating a lot more stuff on Ableton myself. And it really felt like intimate work. It felt like my own work because I was creating the whole thing. I was creating the seed of it and letting it grow. But from a production quality standpoint, it was definitely lower than the stuff that I've released, right? It's like, it's much more rough drafty, but I kind of like that. Like, I kind of like the demo quality of it. It felt very intimate, but I would never consider releasing it on Spotify. It's not like branded enough. It's not going to get the playlist. It's not going to do well. And suddenly here I could actually carve out that intimacy and actually express that, rather than just like be able to experience it on my own. I could express it by saying, this is important to me. So an example of that is I put out songs on Catalog as one of ones, and really, I could set the value of that whatever I want. And sometimes people really resonate with that. It could just be one person who actually feels the same way I feel about that song, and they can express that by collecting that for a higher price. Them actually sacrificing more than a like or whatever. So that was like a really powerful thing. For instance, right now I have a song on there that I would have probably never put on Spotify, but it really matters a lot to me. It has a lot of like meaning in myself, and so I put it up there for 100 ETH because that's what it's worth for me. And it could sit there forever, and maybe someday someone will click it, and it's like, yeah, that's like a life-changing song for me. So the expression of someone else's, resonance with it should be as life-changing for me, sort of thing.
Got it. So one thing that stood out right now, your relationship with your music and other artists kind of changed and evolved with the introduction of crypto, NFTs, et cetera, which kind of brings us to the project that you're working on right now, Songcamp, and the songwriting camps that you put together through Songcamp, and now this new collective called Chaos, which super sick. First thing off the bat, I got to mention two things, okay? First thing is the branding. Beautiful. Like, chef's kiss, beautiful. Second thing is now you guys have started releasing these Twitter spaces or these radio collectives or high quality production. That kind of reminds me of like how I built this, which I told you privately. It sounds amazing. So you guys are already making a really good splash online. I'm curious to hear, what is Songcamp? Okay. Yeah. What is Chaos? And tying it back to you saying how crypto has helped you better appreciate and have a better relationship with your work and other people's work, I think kind of falls into that. So kind of share with me your point of view on that. Yeah, that definitely goes to that other point that of my relationship changing with other artists. I it was around that time, like at the beginning of 2021, when I was first playing in the space and Catalog was coming and where I was like, I really craved this connection of like, let's bring together sort of these Web3 curious musicians, just have a place to do things. So I threw up a Discord in March of 2021. It's hard to remember. March of 2021, called Songcamp. I was like, here's a place for music and the new internet to crash into each other. And really, it was just like a place to bring together musicians that I was starting to meet, and like, let's go do stuff together. The reason I called it Songcamp was because I experienced incredible growth, both creatively and just as a human being, through songwriting camps over the years as a musician, as a songwriter. Especially a songwriting camp I went on in 2017, really opened the doors for me, both on a networking standpoint and just creatively, because I was really working with only a few people here in Montreal, didn't have as much like exposure to more artists. And suddenly I was thrown into a sort of structure of like, you have to make 5 songs in 5 days with all these people. And I'm like, whoa, that's not even possible. That's not human possible. It's too fast. But we did it and it was incredible. And so many bonds were formed. And so I started to feel that like communal aspect with other artists that I didn't really feel before. Like, I had close friends here in Montreal, but I didn't really feel that intensely. Even in LA, it's sort of more just like spread out and everyone's doing their own thing and you have your sort of team and whatever. But like that sort of campy feel really was resonant for me. So I was like wanting to create that sort of in some way here, but just in a way where we can like, not only just focus on the songwriting part, because those songwriting camps just focus on that and then none of the music ever comes out. Let's just extend all the way down to the canvas and actually put that music out too. So that's where the real impetus came from. And the results of that have been that sort of community feeling again, in an incredibly strong way. Like I'm sort of every day sort of blown away with like the sense of like belonging that people are experiencing coming together and running these camps, these projects that we're doing in sort of collective creation and like really experimenting at the edges of music and Web3 together as artists, and Camp Chaos being our third and most recent project that we're smack in the middle of right now. So curation is a superpower. I believe it. I will die on that hill. If you can curate the right minds together in a room, and give them something to do
Mhm.
that's like productive and net positive, really good things can come from that, right? Hence, that kind of boils down to what you're doing at Songcamp. So walk me through more of your curation process. So can
Mhm.
anybody join a camp? What is a camp? What does that look like? How often
Yeah.
do they happen?
Yeah.
How long do they last? What's the goal of the camp at the end of the session? Like, walk me through that a little bit more too.
So camps being sort of, Songcamp is more than camps now, especially we have like this growing community and all these different little projects happening here and there. But really camps are sort of like the flagship experiments, call them. And they're pretty big in scope and ambitious in what they want to achieve. Each one looks different, but it really takes some sort of hypothesis and wants to experiment at the edges of music and Web3, do something different, both in the way that that music is created and then how it's released in these new formats that these nascent technologies in Web3 are allowing us to experiment with. So we're running them at a cadence of 2 a year. We ran 2 last year. The first one was Camp Genesis, which was like a very small project compared to these, with 13 people total, and looked a lot like a songwriting camp, like the one I had in Nicaragua, thrown online, globally, coming together in a Discord, creating music over 2 weeks, and then releasing those as one-of-one NFTs, music NFTs, which at the time in like May of last year was still playing at the edges, right? It was so new, releasing kind of music NFTs. Then we ran our second one in the summer of last year called Camp Electra, which was a bigger project, songwriting camp again, but this one also creating a sort of pop-up production house around it, and bringing sound designers, visual artists, voiceover actors, all storytellers together and creating this world, this planet called Electra, where music is energy and it is dying, and we've been sent there to save it with our music. So creating this sort of story, this world building, this lore, through which the songs created in the songwriting camps could sort of sprout out, and the audience sort of had this immersive experience, an interactive experience with that project. So that was sort of like the big game there. Was kind of creating this game. And then this one, a much bigger one, that one, so it went from 13 people, second one was 42 people, this was 80 people, and this is Camp Chaos.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay,
that is chaotic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Okay.
So Camp Chaos, 80 people. Now we're 77. A few had to fall out here and there, but we're 77 artists. And when we say artists, we call everyone who's working on a camp an artist, even if you're on the operations side. There's 45 musicians, and then there's visual artists, operatives, a dev team, and then also this lore team, which inside the lore team exists Chaos Radio. The other thing we've experienced, especially with our last camp, Camp Electra, was we realized like the actual process of creating this art is art, right? For a lot of artists, you'll hear like, what's the most exciting part of like being an artist? It's sort of like the process of creating whatever art you're making. And now, because we're creating it online together and like communicating online, co-creating, like we're actually capturing that process that so often happens more in the room. We're capturing it. So we're actually able to create art with the process of making art. So we're calling that immersive digital theater. And Chaos Radio is sort of an experiment in immersive digital theater. And it's like how I built this, which is it's documenting what's happening in camp in real time through our calls, our chats, our interviews, our voice memos as we're making stuff. We do weekly murmurations where we, as a group on our camp-wide calls, create some sort of thing together. We all answer a question on our voice memo together. We all take a video of the same thing together. So like creating this art of the process of camp, that's coming through this like podcast like format called Chaos Radio. So yeah, there's a lot happening in
Wow.
Camp Chaos. I haven't even mentioned, I guess, what Camp Chaos is, which it is. The intention is to create this headless artist, this headless band called Chaos.
Which that's the coolest part, right? Like the headless artist. I think that's super cool and very relevant to what's happening in crypto as a whole, with all the pseudo anonymity and a lot of these narratives and ethos that come around producing something or being someone online without really knowing who you are online. What's up, guys? Adam Levy here. Sorry for the quick pause. I wanted to give some love to our 2 NFT sponsors that are making this episode a reality. They are Coinvise and Polygon Studios. On Coinvise, you can create a personal or community-owned social token on Ethereum or Polygon. Coinvise also helps you create incentives through token rewards and bounties, NFT business models, and bot integrations for Discord. Discover more today by visiting coinvise.co. Polygon Studios is the gaming and NFT arm of Polygon, who's focused on growing the blockchain gaming and NFT industry while bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 gaming. The Polygon Studios ecosystem comprises highly loved blockchain games like OpenSea, Upshot, Avagachi, Zedrun, Skyweaver, Decentraland, and Decentral Games. If you're a gamer, builder, or NFT creator looking to join the Polygon Studios ecosystem, get started today by visiting polygonstudios.com. All right, back to the episode. The fact that there's 77 people behind this project genuinely baffles me.
Yeah.
How do you organize? How do you orchestrate 77 people? How do you, I guess, like pay everyone and align incentives? How do you do that? How does that work?
So we learned a lot from Camp 2, from Camp Electra, that we were able to integrate into this camp that helped us answer those questions. Because 42 people is a lot too. And if you can believe it, like now we're double that, and this camp actually feels like less people than Camp 2, because it's more organized and there's just like there's almost ironically less chaos so far in this camp than the previous one. And that's because we really got to see what happens when you crash so many people into a project together and like the sort of blind spots. So a few things. One is I like to call them containers. We have containers of time, containers of space, to give this sort of entire project orientation and give the people in it a sense of orientation. So containers of time is really like the time we're doing this in. And we're doing this camp in 8 weeks. And in camp, we've given that time lore. So every 2 weeks is called an act. So we've act 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's sort of this breakdown, this chunks of time that people can sort of orient themselves in, that this is like the project chaos, which is sort of needed in this sort of digital, ethereal space. You need to give people this sense of containership to say, okay, this is the thing I'm in. And then the other thing is containers of space is like, we're doing this on Discord, we're doing this on Zoom, we're doing this on these channels. And you have a team. This is your team. This is the thing that you're a part of. This is the role you're playing in this network of roles. So in camp, we have 6 main teams. We have Chaos Music, Chaos Visual, Chaos Operations, Chaos Lore, Chaos Economics, and Chaos, because to get to your second question, and Chaos, what did I miss? I missed one. Dev, build. How could you forget? A big one. Okay. And so to dive into the economics part, that was a huge lesson in the last camp. Not that this one's perfect at all. There's definitely imperfections and blind spots in this one, but it's working better than the last one, because here's what we're doing. We're leaning into the fact that this is a network, that we're creating this headless artist called Chaos. We are becoming one. And because of that, we're treating the economics the same. Instead of every artist or creator or dev or what have you being connected to the value of the exact thing that they made, we are all exposed to the value of the aggregate. So instead of I wrote a song with you and one other person, and that's a part of this project, and we're splitting a third of that song, we're actually dropping that song into a pot of 50 songs that are being created in this camp, along with the visual, along with the build, everything coming out as this big NFT collection at the end. But to jump into the chaos economic side of things and how we're sort of incentivizing this network, the thing we learned from last camp was, we'd created a big project with a lot of people in the previous camp, but the difference was artists were exposed to the very art that they had created. And we created these pies of value, these revenue pies that were split amongst the artists who were part of each disparate piece. So in essence, we had to create all these different pies with all these different artists, some artists working in different teams, right? We have visual and maybe music putting together an audio visual piece. And now suddenly teams that aren't even really collaborating now have to figure out a split together. And there could be 12 people who've contributed to that thing. It got intense. It got chaotic. People, teams have different cultures. And now you're trying to blend these cultures to figure out something as, fragile and vulnerable as a conversation around value and art and money. So it got messy. Yeah. And through that, we took the learnings and integrated a new path where we are all creating one split. This entire NFT project will be one split, and we are dynamically splitting that over time via these different mechanics to create this thing that we're calling chaos value flow. So we have this whole chaos value flow system that runs the length of camp, that's broken up into 4 cycles that map to the acts I told you about. So 2-week cycles in which we are self-selecting certain amounts of value, saying, this is what I did, this is how much I deserve. And we're also giving via Coordinate. And this all kind of gets aggregated together for people to get a share in that eventual one big split.
Got it. Got it. I'm so excited for this to come together. Personally, I'm going to be minting this, or at least trying to mint it, because there hasn't been a project like this in crypto just yet. You've never seen like so many people come together, at least under this medium of music, right? And actually put their heads together and push something out. At least I haven't seen anything. Have you seen anything like that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So that's why part of the reason why I also wanted to have you on is because it is a unique project in itself, but also to that, you bring a lot of information and like opinions, I guess, on the current state of where music meets Web3, right? And I've had, I think I've done, this is going to be the episode 34, the last episode of season 4.
Nice.
And we've had everyone from Blau on, the Mint Songs guys on, the catalog guys. We've had Verte, Cooper. We've had Daniel Allen Grady. The list goes on and on and on. Different people. Yeah. Different people innovating in the space. And one thing that I want to get your take on, Matthew, is your thoughts around the 2, I guess, types of music NFTs: patronage-based NFTs and ownership-based NFTs. And correct me if I'm missing another type, but that seems to be the 2 major types that are kind of prevailing the ecosystem right now that you're seeing a lot of artists kind of like experiment with. What are your thoughts between patronage-based NFTs and ownership-based NFTs? I remember you also tweeting if ownership-based NFTs are like a meme to an extent, right? So I want to get your take on that for a minute.
So patronage NFTs versus ownership NFTs. I guess to just like define those, I guess you mean ownership NFTs being attached to some nominal ownership.
Exactly. So like I guess like streaming royalties coming back to the NFT. So you sell like actual IP, right? Or at least fractionalized IP. And patronage-based NFTs is merely collecting to collect a collectible, right? Like an audio NFT, a music NFT for that matter, right? Am I defining those correctly, you think? Do you think there's a better definition?
Well, I guess my initial thought is, like, my initial reaction when you say that is like, I would say I don't see a difference in, let's say, maybe the way you define patronage NFTs. I would call those NFTs ownership NFTs too. I don't necessarily see those as separate. Like, so on the ownership NFT side, or like the, exposed to some level of IP or what have you, it's, we're starting to face this like from a real standpoint now with Chaos, because we are exploring like what would it look like to actually bridge some, if not all of this music over to Web 2 with like a headless artist that was born in Web 3. It could be pretty interesting. We're calling it Operation Trojan Horse, because we're going to like create this artist that's all Web 2ified and shit. But really, if you look underneath, it's like this headless artist of 77 people. So we're exploring that. And like, how do you split IP in this world that we're really kind of playing in a very untraditional way? A lot of interesting questions. But I guess fundamentally where I go is, I think at a base level, like the exposure to intellectual property or royalties from like a Web 2 side gets a lot less interesting to me. As an artist who's sort of like been exposed to those with my own music, like, I know if a song blows up, like you can make a lot of money off that stuff, but like, I think there's a lot more value to be created here for a lot of a longer tail of artists in a lot more interesting ways. But even when you get to the fan side of things, like as a fan, like I don't really even need or want to own my like favorite artists, like a piece of their pie. I think like I can own something that's actually soaked in more lore, if you will. Like it's, the actual art, or it has something to do with, it's like this product of what they created, be it this like what you might call, what you referred to as a patronage NFT. To me, I'm still like exposing myself to the investment side, where it's like, I'm still, if I'm early and they blow up like this, the value should carry over of this thing. I think like this goes to a grander conversation to me around what ownership means. I think the idea of, this 100% pie for master rights, for intellectual property, for a company's value, for all these things, and then we're splitting that up in this ownership NFT, token, share, whatever. That's a story. It's the, fundamental story that our current capitalism kind of world lives on. But it's a story no less. It is lore, right? We're saying, okay, these 100 things represent 100% of that value. So if I have one of them, I own 1% of that value, even though I can't exchange, I can't say here's 1% and like give it to me or whatever in a lot of those cases. To me, there's better lore with what we're getting with Web3. So to me, I'm more interested in owning something that is sort of has that creative sort of like resonance baked into it. And that's the sort of fun, like primary lore of it versus it being the sort of economic lore. I think fans are more want to be exposed to the cultural side of things rather than the economic side of things. And that like paradoxically makes the cultural thing the economic thing. I kind of jumped around all there, but maybe I got there.
So do you think the cultural investor is different than the economic investor, just based off your explanation and using the words, like the keywords that you're kind of bringing up?
Yeah, I think they're really crashing into each other in a way that I haven't seen before. The example I would bring up is like I participate a little bit in NoiseDAO.
Okay.
I'm also like not. I've never really been an investor or anything like that before this world, and now
which is important to note as well, right? Because I guess that would make you so much different than I guess the economic investor for the most part. Okay.
Right. And in so many ways I've like converged with investors, call them collectors now, who are coming in for maybe economic incentives, cultural incentives, maybe both, but we're converging in this space in a way that we didn't converge before at all. Right. So I think they are merging in a lot of ways. And I think like the artifacts of value like will be merging too. And I think like skeuomorphism is a very powerful tool, right? Like it allows us to understand things in a new world. And this is very much a new world. I personally am like more interested in that, like the skeuomorphic nature of sort of owning something that is more akin to a CD than to own something that is more akin to a contract that says I own point whatever of this thing. That's like in our world right now, no artists are trying to own the latter thing, really, right? But like in a previous world, a lot of people were interested in owning CDs, and they did hold this like cultural weight to have your CD package go like that, or your Pokemon card package, or whatever these things. And now we're actually in a world where those things exist, and they're so much more liquid. So like that, yeah, that cultural lore and the economic lore are really merging. And I think the things to adopt on the front-facing UI of it, if you will, is the cultural stuff. So to me, that's like CD-ROMs is like fun and interesting and kind of like nostalgic. Yeah.
It comes down to preferences, in my opinion. I've had so many different takes on this season as to how people think about the different types, and whether one type is defined one way or the other way. I think it really comes down to the individual, of course. And I think it's important to note, like you said, you weren't like the investor type prior. You're more like the cultural type prior, but now you're seeing both worlds converge, and you can't be one without the other, from what it seems. Right. So I appreciate the hot take, and it's interesting to kind of, when I put out the Blau episode, that was the first time I got like criticism online, which is good.
Wow.
Yeah. But like I've gotten criticism before, but to that extent, right? On people kind of understanding and thinking about what is like an IP royalty-based music NFT versus just a collectible NFT that sits in your wallet, right? And what that means, what the difference is, what is ownership really what is ownership in general in crypto? What does that mean? That's a gray area within itself, right? Because the real world doesn't really translate yet to the digital world to an extent, or I guess the crypto world for the most part. There's a lot of gray areas. So I know we're wrapping up on time over here. I want to ask you, like, what can we look forward to in the next couple months? Like, what should we expect from you individually as an artist? Because I own your golden egg from sound.xyz.
Yeah.
and also from
Sick.
sound as a whole. Not from sound, excuse me, from Songcamp and Chaos.
Yeah. Totally. So, well, yeah, as an artist, my girlfriend's decided to make a coffee right now. As an artist, yeah, I mean, like Chaos, the project has sort of eaten my life whole. Songcamp more generally has eaten my life whole. But I sort of I'm trying to stay tethered to my own like personal creative endeavors. And yeah, I don't know, my plan kind of sprinkled throughout maybe the year, but I do have this sort of like vision to release a body of work in December. I'm sort of giving myself like the whole year to like reach that goal and kind of give small bandwidth to it on a consistent basis as we go and embark on all these crazy stuff we're doing in Songcamp. So yeah, hoping to have something interesting on the music side and on the mechanic side for a personal project in December. But yeah, kind of all the way from now until then, it's kind of all Songcamp, and right now is Chaos. For Chaos, we're planning. Yeah, we're actually in our third act right now, so we're on week 6 of 8 of this project. We're creating. There's maybe going to be a few hidden songs, but there's really 45 songs being created through the first 6 weeks. And yeah, after those first 4 weeks, 30 of the songs have been delivered in their mastered form. Incredible music. Like you spoke about, curation is a superpower. It is, and we have the results to show it. We just heard the demos for this last kind of batch, and then in a week from now, they'll be delivered in their final mix form. So we'll have 45 songs at the end of next week, which is crazy. And we're going to be releasing a really interesting NFT project in May. And kind of going to your last question in an interesting way, one of the ways we're playing with NFTs for that drop is we're doing a few interesting mechanics. One is that we're selling packs. So you're actually going to be able to collect a pack of 4 music NFTs, and you can choose to open that pack or not, kind of going into that collectible cards model.
Sick, really cool. Okay.
I'm hoping some packs stay closed for years. I'm definitely going to mint a pack and never open it. The songs are randomly. So of these songs, you'll have like sort of PFP generative style a visual art, in the sense that every single visual piece will be unique throughout the collection, but the music will be, editioned pieces of these 45, 50 songs. But yeah, and they're randomly chosen, the visual layers and what audio you're getting at the time of opening the pack, not at the time of minting. So that's kind of cool. Like some things just never get opened if these packs stay in mint condition. So that's one way we're playing with things. The other way, and this kind of goes to your question earlier about sort of IP stuff or whatever. I mean, it's not really IP, but how we're actually dealing with the value flow, what it results in for the campers. We're actually creating 1,000 what we're calling supercharged NFTs. So in this project of music NFTs that are coming out that people will be able to collect, there are 1,000 being held back that are only distributed to campers based on the amount of this project that they are going to own at the end of the 8 weeks. And those actually are supercharged with liquid split technology. This is a new thing that we are creating in Camp TM, the OX Splits team. And what it actually does, it gets big brain for our like final minute here, but what it actually does is the value of this project will flow to a split, an OX split protocol
contract,
split.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that contract will be determined by those 1,000 NFTs and what wallets they sit on. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating kind of like liquid master rights on a Web3 level, if you will. Let's say I own 2% of this project. I'll therefore own each NFT there's 1,000, each one's worth 0.1%. So I'll essentially have 20 NFTs, which equal the 2% of the split. I can then transfer you 10 of these NFTs, and now your address will get 1% of the split. So my master rights are liquid. So that's kind of like a really exciting part of the project that we're playing.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really,
so that's
really cool.
what to look forward to in May. And after that, we'll see, man.
We'll see.
We'll need a little break.
It's good. It's good. It's good to have you on. Thank you for making the time. We're going to have to do another one of these sometime soon when the project is out. We got to do a recap at some point. So before I let you go, Matthew, where can we find you? Where can we find Songcamp, Chaos, yourself, your music? Just shill it away in the TLDR. Go for it.
So chaos.build is the
Okay.
website to go to for chaos. And then I guess I'd point, people to Twitter, Matthew
Cool.
Chaim on Twitter, Songcamp _ on Twitter. And then we're up in the Discord every Monday, Songcamp Harpy calls.
Sick.
That's our bread and butter.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We'll have you again soon, man.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
What's up, guys? If you've gotten this far, then I owe you a Listener Badge NFT. Go to adamlevy.io/POAP, that's POAP, and click the respective season. Fill out your info, and I'll distribute the free to mint NFT at the end of the season. Also, please make sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast. You won't believe it, but it helps me out a ton. And finally, hit me up on Twitter @LevyChain. I want to hear what you're building, the latest crowdfund you're trying to complete, or if you just simply want to chat. If you couldn't tell already, I love talking about where crypto meets the creator economy, and it's no different if it's coming from you directly. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world, and we'll catch you on the next episode.